freezes in the winter. And ice basically clear cuts all the vegetation, essentially. So you don't have trees necessarily right against the edge of the water. What you have in those areas that are protected like this, you have, looking downstream here, you have this interesting vegetation, grasses coming up to the edge, and then as you get further into deep water, you get the emergent plants like these water lilies through here, and you get all kinds of stuff, and that's sort of how the system develops. Now the reason it stays like with cattails and these emergents is because these plants in the winter die back, and the ice comes up and often will shear off the plant material, and if it were a tree, it would never survive that. So you get this herbaceous or this plant grass-like material on the edges of these areas that are protected. Now, along the shoreline, where you've got a long fetch, in other words, there's a lot of chance of big waves coming in, this will not develop. If you went up to the head of the island, which faces Lake Ontario, you've got a 20-mile stretch there. So in the winter, when this is all frozen and then it starts to break up, waves come in and the ice comes up and back and forth, saws everything down. So you wouldn't find cattails at the head of the island. Because this is a protected area here, meaning protected from waves, you get this kind of system like this. And it evolved with basically a regime that had high water, low water, and it was sort of like this every year. Okay, a curve, but it wasn't a perfect curve. It didn't go up to this height and this level. It looks more like this. When you plot that out over 100 years, it is some extremes, and then there's sort of this average, and then if you do a real average, you get sort of what the average water level is. Okay, now the plants respond not to that average. They typically respond to these extremes. Okay, now if the high water comes early in the year, okay, and then tapers off so that the high water gets lower, or the water levels get lower during the late season, different kinds of plants will grow than if you had low water in the middle of the winter and high water late in the year. So it'll change. That's all I want to tell you. Now, how it changes it's a whole lecture, okay? And we're not going to do a whole lecture here. You guys got things to do here. Okay, so now the seaway comes in. A couple things happen. First of all, they take out that sill. Now, why do they do that? Because they want to bring a boat or a vessel that draws 30 to 40 feet of water. Okay, so they've got this thing open. Well, that's not going to work. That'll drain the whole damn place. Okay, so they then put a dam across. That's the first thing. Then, because the dam prevents boats coming up and down, they then put a series of locks in. So you've got a lock and dam system downriver here. Okay, so if you got the range, the maximum and the minimum like this, and you got people owning property along the edge of the river, and you have a boathouse, you don't want the water up here because in the old days, what you used to have to do in the early spring is you had your dock, and then you had another dock that went on top of the dock, so you could get into your boathouse to get to your boat. And people didn't like that. Too high water, and they didn't like the too low water because they would keep Don's prop shop really busy. Okay? And you guys know all about this stuff, right? So what they did is they compressed. They basically compressed with the operation of the seaway this amplitude of high and low waters. And they went like this. That's the first thing they did. Second thing they did, remember we talked about the ice and the vegetation? Well, ice does the same thing to boathouses. It grinds them up. And if you have a pier out there, and you have it on cribs, and we had one when we lived over on the Canadian side, heartbeat. 2 hours, 3 hours of ice grinding in there, you know what? It's a $12,000 crib replacement. So, the International Joint Commission said, well, we'll keep the water low in the winter. So they let a lot of water out. Of course, it's not just letting water out. They let water out through the turbine. So they're making electricity. So now we've got boats, we've got property values, we've got recreational boating propellers, we've got ships wanting to come in and out, and we got this interest in power. So we've got a very complicated sort of mix here of things. And then we've got old Mother Nature down here. Some years it rains a lot, some years we have drought, and so we have a